Hello and welcome to the Vector Garden. It's a nice day today. Let's create a Zen garden. And for that we need two things to happen. Let's zoom in here. So of course this is sand, this is natural material, so we need some randomization of these parallel lines. And of course we need the parallel lines themselves. But we can get the randomization in a brush, but then we cannot make it parallel in the same move. So the same brush cannot be both. So we need two steps. Now for the sand, I have used this kind of shape here. So these are just some dots. And then from that, we can create a scatter brush. We can take this. These are, of course, black, and then drag them into the brushes panel, make a scatter brush. I'm going to cancel that because I have that brush. Let's take a look at it. And here are the settings. So I have left the size as fixed, and then the spacing is random, and you see there are quite low values so that they overlap. And then we have just a little scattering, which puts the shape to the left and right of the path. And of course, the rotation is totally random. It's relative to the path, but that doesn't matter in this case at all. You can also leave it to the page. And then the method, of course, is tints. So let's cancel that. Now we also need those lines. So let's take a look at how this looks. I'm just going to draw a path. Let's take away that fill and apply that. So this is what's happening. We see all these dots are applied here, they are rotated and moved to the left and right, and we get this nice sand look. You could not make it like this inside of the same brush, because then when you rotate that, you would get a complete chaos. So that does not work. We have to create those parallels using different methods. The simple method, if you do that on a closed shape like this, you can use offset path as an effect. Of course, we need more strokes for that. So in the appearance panel, which I have here, which you can find in window appearance, you will create a copy of the stroke and apply the offset path effect to it using whatever distance you want to have there. And then do that again, create a new one and make it double the distance and so on. That also works on open paths, but there is some downside to that. Let's do that. I'm going to duplicate this brush stroke and then let's apply offset path. And you see we get the parallel lines, but you always get this here at the end, because when offsetting an open path, you always get a shape. And when you have a couple of these, we've got another one, then of course you get darker lines here and there. Now, if you can use that in a way that these are outside of the page, I could just make that longer and then it's cut off at the end and nobody will see it. That's perfect. But if you can't do that, let's take a look at other methods. Let's get a little nerdy here. Now, as you know, you can use art brushes in order to create the parallel lines. So we can just have some parallels, select them all. Of course, again, they are black. So drag them into here and make an art brush. And again, I have already done that, so let's cancel that. Here's the art brush. And again, it's set to tints. What you then do is draw with that. But you cannot now directly apply this because then it changes. So in order to have that scatter brush on all those lines, what you would need to do is expand the appearance in order to get the actual lines. But then this is no longer easily editable. So what can you do? You can now group this and then apply a new stroke to that group. And to that stroke, you can apply the scatter brush. But you're not done yet, so it's already nice, but you also have the original lines in the back. You would need to do something else. Let's go into those contents, which is the original brush. Now this, you can set it to white and then they are gone. But of course, if you have this on a colored background, then you will see the white. So Let's set this to multiply. So now only the original strokes are on white and multiply, and of course white multiply, you do not see that, and then it's good. But again, there's another downside to it, because the original stroke will be duplicated. That's always happening when you use this group trick. That's the downside of it, that you get the original stroke 2 times. Now another thing you could do, I'm going to duplicate this for it and then strip all the appearances. Now if you have Astute Graphics plugins, then you have the stylism tool, and below that is the AG offset tool. And with that you can just click and drag, and then using the down or up arrow to just control how many you would like to have. Let's just set this to retain, and then we can close that. And now we can set this to that brush. You see it's now gone because the AG offset needs to be moved up here. So we first get our copies and then apply that stroke to them. Now the downside of this method is that this looks like they are not really randomized. You see there are some patterns in them that appear again. I don't know why that happens, actually. And that is something that does not happen when we offset the path. So this is one created with offset path, and it doesn't happen there. There's something else you can do to get rid of these. And I'm going to make a copy of one of these for them and not use a brush on it, but I'm going to offset that path. And then we change that stroke width to a width that completely covers the things that we want blocked out. But this is now ugly, of course. Then we can change this stroke's opacity to 0 and then turn the whole thing into a knockout group. And this hides this end here. So let's move that on top of the drawing, and you see then we have that working. So a couple of methods to get your Zen garden something you can draw on this beautiful day.